Greetings, my friends. Shalom Aleichem. On behalf of Congregation Beth Evergreen, thank you again for inviting us to share worship with you this weekend. And thank you to Pastor Martin for offering me an opportunity to comment on these sacred words, these shared scripture from the book of Isaiah. We're looking at chapter 46, verses 10 and 11. And I'll start by reading them and offer some comments. Hearken to me, you stubborn of heart, you who are far from deliverance. I am bringing my deliverance close. It is not far off. My salvation shall not be delayed. And I will grant salvation for Zion, for Israel, my glory. Or in Hebrew, Shimuna Elai ibirei lev, harachokim mitzdaka. Keravti tzidkati lo tirchak, utshuati lo teacher, v'natati b'tzion tishual Yisrael tifarti. So there are three Hebrew words from that passage that I'd like to highlight today that in some ways can change the meaning of these verses for us. So I'm going to read it with the Hebrew words inserted. Hearken unto me, you stubborn of heart, you who are far from tzidkah, or tzidakah. I am bringing my tzidkah close, it's not far off, and my tishuah shall not be delayed. I will grant tishuah in Zion for Israel, my tiferet. So there's three words I introduced there. Tzidkah, or tzidakah. Tishuah, and Tiferet. They all start with a T, so maybe we can remember them. Tzidkah is translated as deliverance, but it comes from the same root as the word for justice, tzedek, and fairness. So if you reread the verse with that in mind, it goes like this. I am bringing my justice close. It is not far off. And this I say to you who are far from justice and fairness. The second word was tishuah, which is translated here as salvation or sometimes triumph. Tishuah literally simply means help, assistance, timely aid, right? Help that comes at the right time. So if you reread those verses with that in mind, the verse suggests that the help you need most will not be delayed. It will come. I will grant that help in Zion for Israel, my Tiferet. I will grant that help. It will not be delayed in Zion for Israel, who is called Tiferet, my Tiferet. And here it's translated as glory. But Tiferet has many meanings. In rabbinic tradition, it means beauty and glory. But it also, in the system of Kabbalah, represents the heart of compassion. So as I understand these verses, the way that we get this help that is coming to us, that will get us to justice, to tzedek, that will bring justice back, is with compassion, with tiferet. And compassion is the source of the deepest and most lasting beauty. Inner beauty shines forth as compassion. So how will you know Tiferet when it comes? Where can we seek it? It is glorious. And we are taught through the Hebrew that this glory, this beauty is born of compassion. And compassion, true compassion, is not born of righteousness, of claiming to know the truth or what is just and right, nor is it born exactly of acceptance. So what then? The sages teach that compassion is born first and foremost of humility. And humility is the quality par excellence exhibited by Moshe, or Moses, our teacher, our shared prophet. There's a poignant story, one in which he's named as the most humblest of men. In the book of Numbers, chapter 12, verse 3. I'll read the first 3 verses so you get the context. Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses because of the Cushite woman whom he had married. For he had married a Cushite woman. And they said, "Has not the Lord indeed spoken with us, not just Moses?" And the Lord heard it. Now Moses, as a man, was very humble, more humble than any human, any Adam on the face of the earth, on the face of the Adamah. From this story, we learn, or we're supposed to see, an example of Moses' exhibition of humility. So where is it found? So this verse is thrown in there in between the offense, the brother and sister of Moses accusing him of claiming that he's the only one who speaks to God, or perhaps of taking a Cushite wife, which Cush is Ethiopia. Perhaps it had something to do with the color of her skin that they were offended. But it's not Moses that responds. God responds, God's self. And Moses leaves a space for others, allies, to respond in his stead. So this is one example of one form of humility where Moses contracts himself. He bears the burden, the offense of his siblings, no less, accusing him and bringing him down, insulting him in public. And he bears that offense with silence. It says he bowed to the ground. And the offense is punished by God. So Moses is described as the humblest of men. But again, this isn't the only kind of behavior we see of Moses. Moses also stands on a mountaintop and tells the entire people, gives them a whole instruction of law. He is not shy. He does not always constrict the amount of space, limit the amount of space he takes up. But in this circumstance, his humility is exemplified by him not taking up too much space, of being a savlan, someone who is willing to bear the burden of insult without reacting and responding with violence or anger. But there are other forms of humility too. We are taught that Abraham was also a humble man, but for very different reasons. One verse says that he was described as humble because he set aside his own place for prayer. It's kind of confusing. If he took up space for himself, that doesn't sound like humility. That sounds like taking up space. And yet, taking up the right amount of space is maybe what humility is all about. Because when we take up the space that is ours by right, we each are endowed with the dignity of connecting with the Creator and with one another and our truest selves. And that takes space, and we should claim that space. To take up too little space is likewise a transgression. So Abraham, by taking up space for himself for prayer, is inviting and allowing another to take up space for themselves at the same time. The Hebrew word for a humble person, anav, if you revocalize it, spells another Hebrew word that says, they answer. So this is the alternative expression of humility, which may be counterintuitive. That to be humble is to be responsive to a call. In the words of our ancestors, from Abraham and Jacob to Moses, that call came, the response to that call came with the expression, Hineni, here I am. I will not stand by idly by the blood of my brother. Hineni, here I am. What invites that call, that response from us to injustice or to the suffering of another? From where does Hineni come from, this humble response? It comes from compassion. In order to have compassion, we need to see and experience and recognize the experience of the other as unique to them and recognize that suffering in ourselves as well. To enter into the experience of another is true compassion. And this will restore the glory to Israel and bring about the fulfillment of the prophecy from Isaiah. You need my help? The humble response, here I am, Hineni. My help is coming. So I reached out to you at a time of mandatory social distancing and asked you to help me bring our communities closer together. And what did you say? Hineni, here I am. I asked you to join us in singing and praying. I asked you to pray with a bunch of white Jews from the mountains, and you said, Hineni, here I am. You want to bridge the gap between our sacred faiths? Hineni, here I am. You want to bridge the cultural gap, the color gap, the prejudicial gaps? Hineni, here I am. And you want to bridge the gap between the injustices of the current reality and get to work together fulfilling the prophetic promise of liberty and justice for everyone? Yeah, I do. Hineni, here I am. Like our shared ancestors, Abraham, Jacob, Moses, and like you, I stand here ready in body and mind with my community to stand with you to respond to that call humbly, taking up the right amount of space, not too much and not too little. And I say with you, Hineni, here I am. Thank you.